What's up, everyone? As you can see, SD17 is alive. He's here. I know that this setup right here isn't painting him in the best light because there's a lot of conflicting lights and background anything. So I'm going to work on that because he's going to be a permanent fixture on the Starlight Digest podcast as its fifth member and bringing in all the news and everything. So I'm going to work on that display. So I hope that him sitting here as we kind of go through this final part in this build series of this pit droid, you can kind of look at him and is in all like I do every single day. I can't believe that I actually finished a project first of all, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. But the sense of accomplishment about finishing a project is awesome. But yeah, he's here, so I'm gonna go through a few things, some of the tips, tricks, troubleshooting, the stuff that I've experienced. Building him from printing all the way to sanding and painting and weathering and everything, and see how I could talk myself into future projects of doing things a little bit different, better, safer. And yeah, we'll go into that. Plus, I want to go into the weathering too. So the weathering that I did on here is actual weathering. It's not painted on, and I kind of want to go through a little bit pros and cons of what I've done and show you my techniques and methods of what I did for weathering, and I have some cool close-up videos and everything for us to discuss because again, by all means, it's not the end all be all. I'm here to learn too. I'm here for future projects and future builds to kind of do things better or different. And it's all about the result, the end result, right? The journey is just ease of you, like the wear and tear on your body, and your sanity of building projects and prop building in general. I think that's where I need to kind of like address a few issues on myself on when I go to the next droid or next build or whatever. But the end results is the key, and that's what everybody sees. Again, I couldn't be happier with it. He'd made his live debut at the Starlight Digest on May 4th as a Star Wars podcast. We had a trivia night, and that's the first time the guys on the podcast saw him. That's the first time anybody seen him in public. And yeah, the reaction was great. I see a lot of pictures on Instagram and everything, of that event and people taking their personal pictures, and that gives you, as a builder of this droid, there's a sense of pride. Like actually, people bought it. They bought what it was, what we were doing, and of course the questions poured in: how, why, if, all those things, and I always direct them to this build series, hoping that it's a diary for myself for future builds, but also people who want to get into it, and also people who have been into it, come in and tell me like, hey, this is what they do or you guys do, and try some different techniques. So let's get into it. All right, some of the tips and tricks and troubleshootings that I went through and things that I will do differently or more of moving on. The very, very first thing is I am going to concentrate more on the post painting process, knocking down those print layer lines and those seams, and really bonding the pieces together, because there was a few times where I'm sanding away and doing things, especially on the helmet, the seams where I had to put two pieces together, because again, I didn't print this all in one piece, right? It was mostly printed on the Bamboo Lab A1 Mini, which is a very small build plate, so I didn't take account for some stress that I was putting on, that I kept cracking the seams. And by mean cracking is the paint that I was doing. I was finished, I was ready to assemble, and then I looked and there was a hairline fracture here and there, and I had to go in there with more, sand it off, bond it more together, glue it all together, and be very mindful of cracking it again. So I'm going to go back, of course, on future builds and everything, and make sure those things are very, very secure, bonded, sanded, filled, and all that stuff before applying paint. Because again, going back and redoing the process is frustrating, but also you're threatening the finish of the build itself, because as you may know, rushing into things and trying to get things done because you want to see it, it's going to cause for heartaches later when you bump it, drop it, crack it, whatever, and you have to fix it. But you're already done, right? Essentially. So being a little bit mindful moving forward, I'm going to very make sure that things are bonded well and sanded more on the print lines because once you start hitting it with you got your initial sanding. Once you start hitting with the primers and all that stuff, yeah, it's filling in those gaps, but it takes a lot more effort to knock down those print lines and those those little ridges, especially in the forearm details and all that stuff. As much as you want to knock it down, I think I just need to spend more effort on that in the future because like I said, when you're getting into the paint and stuff, it tends to be a little bit harder to get into the plastic again. Wasting sandpaper, filing, all that stuff. So again, next build, I'm going to get the print file or the prints as smooth as possible before hitting it with primers because the primers are going to get rid of those ridges and all that stuff. But when there's big gaps in it, you kind of want to do it at that base uh, spot, right? So that far as printing wise, the orientation and everything else, that was perfect. I think Droid Division gave us great files already positioned on your build plates for printing. I don't think I'm going to change anything like that unless I see a real problem. But for the most part, that was awesome. Another thing that I did, but I'll just kind of want to stress a little bit more is test fitting everything, assembling them all printed, and then taking apart and then painting them, and then assembling them again. But all the details under his dome, after painting all those pieces, putting it together was difficult because I didn't take into account for the paint buildup and stuff. So all the tolerances, I had to go in and really file things down, and I cracked a lot of the paint doing that. But I had, and we'll talk about the weathering parts, as I just kind of just chalked it up to, well, that's just wear and tear on the droid, and so any kind of scratches that I know that I've done on purpose or are on purpose by accident, by fitting two pieces together and scratching the paint all the hell, I'm just chalking that up to the actual weathering on the droid, but I know what I did, and it wasn't intentional. So I don't know how to avoid that mostly, unless it's after painting, taping off those two connections. Like if a piece was going to fit into another piece, taping it off so it's exposed plastic, where your 3D prints, and then the paint could go. I think that would work really good if you're trying to get a pristine, glossy droid out of it, or not just a droid, just anything you're doing. I think that's a better technique to avoid painting any contacts of other pieces together. Yeah. The lens right here is a clear Christmas ornament. It was the 3-inch diameter. I found it on Amazon, and I just cut a piece. I scored it with a knife and kept scoring and scoring and scoring until I had a piece right there. Now, this is not permanent because I think this is kind of sitting in there, friction held. I think I want to change it out for other. I've seen other people's builds. They put like LED screens in there and have a cool, different look. But for my purpose and for what it is, it's a very cool temporary fix and cool find. I just sprayed it with what was it? Like plastic primer to get plastic ready for primer, and it fogs up the plastic really nice. So I use that. I sprayed it on there and I wet sanded in the middle of the eyeball to clear out some of that plastic to give a wear and tear look around the eyeball itself. You can still see all the prints inside the eye, right? So if you light it up, it's going to expose all of those files and all those details in there, which was really cool. So I am kind of teetering on leaving it like this or changing out to a circular LED, something that has a little more character, because I do want to add lights and I do want to add sounds to it. So right now, he doesn't have any lights and sounds, which is going to be something else I do in the future. But I do want to do that. So having that in mind, not permanently welding or gluing pieces together that you lose access to. So keep that in mind too, right? The dome does come off, so I can add a speaker, and again, the lens for lighting and stuff like that. Uh, so I'm glad that I left those options available. And so that is a helpful tip. Don't if you're thinking about changing it, find ways of friction holding it, and which I did. So. I've seen when I was doing this, I've seen some people make some comments about the joints on this pit droid specifically being very loose, right? And I haven't had a problem with that, and I use the furniture bolts provided, and I tighten them up really good, and so he's very articulated, but I always have to loosen up the bolts, put them in position, tighten them back up. Now, and I will say this, and what I was just previously talking about, I spray painted everything when I painted him. So some of those fixtures and fittings, have a buildup of paint in between that's probably helping tighten up those joints. So, without too much wear and tear on him when I don't move him as much, I think that's a good fix. But if it does become loose, like say like the elbow comes out, constantly, because I didn't put the bolt that the instructions wanted me to. I just felt that was too permanent. So I think if you just wrapped it with a piece of tape and then put it in there, it friction holds really well. But as far as anything else, I mean, the hands are, they swivel, and that's good. But if you want to tighten that up, you can like wrap that joint with some electrical tape or something like that and have a little bit more tension there. It's up to you guys, but no. As far as like loose joints, it's been great. It's been great. Okay, so let's talk about the weathering and my other parts to this video. I've kind of talked about it, but I'm going to show you now my process and my thought process going in. I'll just kind of reiterate here is that I wanted an actual wear and tear weathering look on this droid, meaning if his shoulders have wear and tear, it's actual stuff that this droid went through. And I wanted to physically make those marks myself rather than painting them on. So any kind of contact with any kind of pieces that he has with himself or the environment, I physically took sandpaper or a file and I made those scratches and marks. All about telling the story of my droid, right? The story as he's going through. So even future marks that I make by like, hitting it on accident, it's part of it. It's part of the story, right? But what I did is I base coated him all in chrome, and I used that bare chrome paint, right? And so every single piece here has chrome underbase. And then to protect that chrome, because I didn't want to dig into the plastic or the primer that was under him, I protected it with some high gloss varnish or some sealer, right? And I did a very liberal coating, thin layers, but maybe like 3 or 4 layers on top of every single piece here. So when I am digging him, with sandpaper stuff, it's only touching the chrome and not, or that protect the piece and only showing the chrome rather than digging into that too. So that helped a lot because it was really easy to dig into the actual plastic and chip away this paint because the paint's applied pretty thin, after it's all cured and dried. So after chroming it all and doing my base paint that I want, for example, the red parts have the chrome underneath and it's painted red, that's it. And then the black is black. And then the gray is just the gray on top. Now, I think I mentioned before on the last part, the gray did not, if I sanded this, it was too close to the chrome. It really didn't matter. So I left all the gray as is. And I was going to use a wash later down the road if I wanted to, to kind of like, put some grime and dirt in it. But honestly, I like it the way he is at. It was perfect. The red and the black took great. So all the weathering that you're seeing here, and I'm doing close-up shots and everything, is just going in there with wet sandpaper after it's all cured and dried and everything, and letting these parts really sit and cure. I took wet sandpaper or wet sanding technique, probably 1,000 grit, and I started just kind of hitting the corners just lightly until that silver or that chrome started getting exposed. And you know what, this technique didn't allow me to go overboard with it because it was kind of hitting those perfect spots where the corners and seams were just coming through. And if I wanted to get stuff on the body, I really had to work towards it. So it was really holding me back from what I call the chocolate chip effect. You know, or if you see some builds, and again, that's it's preference, right? But my preference is more of a natural, and some people do the chocolate chip where it's like, you know, they just sporadically put these weathering marks all over, and it doesn't look lived in. It looks weird, you know, because honestly, how are you going to get, unless he's like, you know, splattered with gunfire or rocks are hitting him all over the place. It just, you know, that effect doesn't look natural to me. So I really paid attention to all the lines, especially in the hands and the feet, the ones that have contact the most, right? So again, telling that story is so important, especially it reads well, you know. But yeah, I mean, that chrome under base really came through. All the paints, it was great. I used a wet sanding technique. If I hit it with dry sandpaper, it started to scratch up the sheen too much. The wet sanding technique preserved that gloss on it that I wanted, but also exposed that chrome underbase. So that's the techniques that I used on it. Again, if anybody has any different suggestions, I'm all ears, you know, because again, this is not going to be my only droid. I have another droid build that I've been working on for a long time, and then of course future ones. But yeah, and again, and how I just kind of reiterated, if you make a mistake, or there's no such thing as a mistake, right? But if you make if you go a little bit too far, just I would suggest go with it and make that part of the joy, make that part of the story, and maybe work around a little bit more. Don't overwork it. There was a couple spots on here where the paint, I didn't, you know, impatience, and you know, like for this spot right here. I know it's hard to see. I know, I apologize, and I'll get a better setup for this. But this part right here, a lot of the paint chipped away, and so you can see that silver right there, or the chrome. And I was like, well, you know what? That's part of it. That's what happened to this droid. And but I had to stop myself because if I kept trying to fix it, it was getting worse. So a little bit of restraint, less is more in a lot of ways. Myself, I avoided the chocolate chip weathering. If you see it, it will make sense. But yeah, I'm very very happy of how the weathering really turned out on this guy, and um, honestly, that was probably the most fun part of doing this. Was that final details once he's assembled in front of you, and actually I weathered before I assembled him, so I took all the pieces, but I made sure that it was the same amount of weathering. So this wasn't heavily weathered, and this it's kind of like the same constant pattern, if you will. So, but yeah, it was very very therapeutic sitting there and doing it and seeing him come to life as a used, a used universe kind of lived in droid, and that was probably my favorite part of doing this whole thing. It made all that elbow pain and carpal tunnel of sanding and sanding and sanding all worth it, right? It's almost like it was a lot of work during the journey, and I forgot about it now because I want to do another one, right? But I know that there's going to be a lot more work, especially when I get into bigger droids. It's hard. Like some people ask all the time, and I'm sure that if you're building droids, I'm sure people ask all the time, how much? I'll buy it off you, and you're like, wow, I'm flattered, but I don't want to do this again, and I don't want to lose them, but I don't want to build another one right away, So it's a very hard answer for me, at least, to be like, yeah, I don't, if you want to offer money onto it, and I know that in a droid division you're not allowed, so it's hypothetical. But yeah, it's just one of those things like I don't want to sell them because I don't want to do them again, yeah. But anyway, yeah, the weathering technique I found. Now, that's going to be mainly for droids like this with heavy weathering that I want. If I wanted a pristine droid, say for example, I wanted to use this droid and he came right off the Imperial assembly line, so high gloss and everything, then I'm going to have to really assess my approach, because even even fitting, putting pieces together, there's chips and stuff. So maybe I wouldn't do an underbase at all as far as a chrome. Maybe I would print all in black, or the colors that he's supposed to be, I would print those colors. So if anything happens, it exposes that same color at least. And maybe that can preserve a high gloss production kind of finish to him. Different ways to explore. So, it's always that, having a plan and building accordingly. Yeah. So what's next for him? Well, I've mentioned before, I want to put the lights, and I want to put some sounds. So the only electronics is going to be a speaker with different sounds and lighting for in the lens. And the back has a little access hatch where I could put a Raspberry Pi circuit in there and run. There's every piece. They've like I said, they've really engineered this well, where you can run wires through his whole body, and they're all hidden because they're all they're like, most of the pieces are hollow where you can do that. So he's gonna have it accessible hatch in the back where I'll have everything in there, and I can upload some sounds and everything, and have them light up. Now, I don't know anything about electronics, so that's gonna be, which is scary and fun at the same time, because it's fun because I get to learn something. I'm going to learn it. That's how we do things. But scary is because I don't even know where to start, other than watching other people's YouTube videos and see what they do, and then exploring and keep exploring. So, yeah, the world of prop building and cosplay has got my respect a billion times over, because just my attempt at it with these people have been doing it for a long time, and there's such great builders out there, even like I said, Droid Division, who takes their time and really details these droids out and make it where someone like me could print it and have this now, as a full scale Star Wars droid is amazing, right? It makes you want to do everything that they offer, and that's the plan, right? So, but this isn't a small project, but start small before you get into the battle droids or destroyer droids, right? So, yeah, a lot of learning stuff. I'm going to try different paints because, again, the paints that I used, maybe I want a little bit more durability out of them, because they're very easily chipped and very easily scratched, like easy. Sometimes even with that protective coating over it, right? So I don't know. I have to explore a little bit more, but but it's all trial and error, and you'll find out what works and what doesn't work, and you keep going. Again, so my recommendation is, if you're going to do a droid, do a small one, do a weathering pattern that's, more natural, but a weathered droid, not a pristine droid, because again, I think that's it'll be a little bit harder for your first droid, right? So if you do scratch them by accident, it's all part of it. That was the plan, So yeah, I think, thank you guys. Honestly, thank you so much for sticking with me through this whole build series. I didn't want it to go this long in between, but again, a lot of the weather that was happening, that like I said, I don't have a garage, so I have to do this outside, and wind and cold, like every time, every weekend seemed to be another winter storm coming through, and I just couldn't get it together in that timely manner. So thank you so much for sticking with this 4-part series. This is the final one for this pit droid, so the next one is going to be very interesting, and it's going to encompass the world that you see behind me, this wall right here, the action figure world, where I do have it already built. I'm just going to make a nice, solid video for everybody to check out and see that process there. So if you haven't, subscribe, like, and hit that bell notification for more builds. And I promise you, the time in between is going to be a lot shorter. and there are going to be a lot more footage involved as I continue this journey with this channel. I'm having a blast doing this. I think I've been into 3D printing for 10 years, 10 plus years, and it keeps getting better. And yeah, I just cannot fathom that that 10-year-old me would one day say you can make your own droids in the Star Wars universe and display them just like you do your figures. And it's a great hobby to get into. And then of course do public events, join 501st stuff, do your own charity events and bring them out there and see the reaction of the people. It makes it all worth it. It makes it all that blood, sweat, and tears. I mean, literally, like really, if you know, and yeah, it's a lot of fun. So thank you guys. Until next time, yeah, just stay safe and print away.